Hello, I'm Dr. Cécile Cosculuela. Welcome to this ESL video on English grammar and more precisely on the English Verb Matrix. So what is the English Verb Matrix? Well, it is a one-page document that contains everything you need to keep in mind in order to get your verb forms right each and every time. The matrix is actually the result or the third step of a triadic project that includes 3 books and 3 videos also. The first one on the English verb equation, and then the second one on English verb formulas to understand how to use the equation. And then the third step is the one we're talking about in this video, the English Verb Matrix. And in order to fully understand the present video, you need to have worked on the video on the equation because it needs to be really clear to you that anytime you give a form to a verb, anytime you put a verb in a sentence, anytime you make a sentence virtually, you need to choose operators from the equation, which is the series of all the operators that you can use to give a form to a verb. And obviously, you choose some of them and you leave some of them out, and so you come up with what is called a formula, the series of operators that you use for this specific verb to put it in this specific sentence. And so there are 2 videos on verb formulas on YouTube for you to understand how it works and get some practice. And at the end of the second one, we come up with the formulas for all the tenses that exist in English. Now, all the tenses do not require to use all the operators that are mentioned in the equation. So as you know, do plus V0 is not part of the tenses. It is used to make the different types of sentences unless there is a red operator in the sentence. And then again, operator modal plus V0 is not part of the tenses per se. It is an operator you can add to the tenses afterwards to add more meaning. And same thing for the voice here, the passive voice is not included in the tenses. So if we want to be very precise, we can write all the zeros that correspond to all the operators that are not used to create all the tenses that exist in English, but we can also make a simpler presentation and only keep the 0 that corresponds to the simple form, which is the only 0, almost the only 0 that has a name. Because yes, indeed, in the verb equation, all these zeros here, as you know, 0 is a mathematical symbol that is used in linguistics to refer to the absence of something. So this 0 refers to the absence of do plus V0 and it does not have a name. And this 0 here refers to the absence of modal plus V0 and does not have a name either, and neither does this 0 here, which refers to the absence of the perfect. Whereas this 0 here refers to the absence of be plus ving, and it does have a name. It is called the simple form. And so the 5th question you ask yourself when you give a form to a verb is, do I use the be plus ving form or do I use the simple form? Okay, we can't say it all in one video, so I'll refrain myself from adding more details there, and I'll just say that what we want to do now that we know exactly what operators we can use to give a form to a verb and what tenses exist in English and how they are created, what we want to do is to show how to go from the operators to the tenses and more in one page. And that's what we're going to do with the matrix. But before that, I can't refrain from making a few comments very, very quickly. So as you have probably heard, it is very often said that there are two tenses in English, the present and the past. And as we can, I think, see very clearly from this recap table here, the present and the past are not tenses. They are operators. Let me highlight them for you here. We can see operator VS. So the present and the past are not tenses, they are operators, and we can see operator VS here that is combined to other operators in order to create the four present tenses that exist in English. And same for the past. The past is an operator that I'm highlighting here. And it's combined with other operators to create the four past tenses that exist in English. So as we can see, there are 8 tenses in English. And when we say this is the present tense, then we want to be more specific and we want to know, is it the present simple, the present B plus VING, the present perfect simple, the present perfect B plus VING? Okay, so when we say it's the present, we don't really mean, if we're really rigorous and precise, we don't really mean it's the present tense. We mean it's the operator of the present, and it's been combined with other operators to create all the tenses that exist in English. Okay, also maybe quickly I would like to highlight the fact that this system is really, this verb system is really very logical, very simple, and also really easy because as you can see, once you understand how to create the verb forms in the four present tenses and you see the parallel between the present and the past, then you've done half the work and you already know that the second half is going to be very similar. You just need to switch from operator VS to operator VED. Now we have very quickly mentioned that these two operators have a special importance because they are the only ones that are compulsory. So anytime you conjugate a verb, you need to use operator VS or operator VED. And then you may very well add nothing else. So if we look at the present simple here, there's VS and no other operator. So in the formula, in the equation, the formula would be VS and no other operator. But as we said, none of these zeros has a name. None of them have a name. None of them has a name except this one here, which is the zero of the simple form. And when I say none of them has a name, of course, I'm thinking, well, you know, this is the passive voice and this is the active voice. So this zero has a name too. But since the active voice is always here by default and we hardly mention it, then we're not going to mention the voices in the tenses. Whereas the simple form is absolutely part of the tenses and so is the perfect. So number 1, 4, and 5 are the operators that are required to create all the tenses, and therefore we can actually make things simpler and only use the zero of the simple form, which is here somewhere. Yes, on this slide you can see the formulas are easier to master. Okay, so what we want to do is to go to find a presentation that enables us to see at a glance on one page everything that we need to keep in mind in order to go from the equation to all the tenses that exist in English. And this one-page presentation is the English Verb Matrix. So as you can see, the numbers here are the numbers of the equation. So we're going to put the whole equation in the matrix, and then we're going to add the names of the tenses and also examples on these lines there, and a few other things that I will mention later on in this video. So let's get started. Number one, as you know, the first choice that I need to make when I give a form to a verb is I need to decide whether I'm going to use the present VS or the past VED. And then the second step in the equation, you remember, is do I use do plus V0 or not? But then this second step is not included. I mean, do plus V0 is not included in the tenses, and therefore we're mentioning it here, but we will only talk about it when we talk about the different operators that are required to create the various types of sentences that exist. And then we know that if we use the green operator, we cannot use any of the red ones. So let's say we do not want to use the green operator in this case, and we want to focus on the next one. Number 3 is, do I use a modal or not? Do I use modal plus V0 or not? And again, modals are not part of the tenses, so we're mentioning them here because if they appear in a formula, they appear at that point in the formula, so they are directly combined with either VS or VED, but they are not part of the tenses per se. So we will first of all give examples, as you can see here, without a modal, right? So examples without a modal on these two lines, and then examples with a modal, on these two lines, right? So that's what we'll do. And for now, let's go on to number 4. So as you remember, number 4 in the equation is, do I use the perfect or not? So let's add this element in the matrix, and well, you you understand it's very clear here that I ask myself the question, do I use the perfect or not? That question is necessary whether you first have chosen to use the present or the past. Therefore, the question is mentioned twice because you might have made a first choice. You might have chosen first to use the present, and so you need to ask that question, and same thing if you have chosen the past instead. Therefore, the question repeats itself on the matrix, but it's one single question, obviously, right? This table here, this matrix might seem complex at first, but there's a lot of repetition, and actually once you know that, once you understand that, you see it as the logical links, the logical structure of the verb system in English, and it makes things clear. You can see how it works very clearly. Let's go on to number 5. You remember number 5 is, do I use the be plus VING form or do I use the simple form? So again, this question needs to be asked regardless of what other options we have chosen before. So let's say that I have chosen to use the present, and then I chose not to use the perfect, and then I need to ask myself, do I use the simple form or do I use the be plus VING form, right? And the same question is repeated in the matrix because you may very well have chosen to use the present and also the perfect. And then the next logical question is, do I use the simple form or do I use the be plus VING form? Okay, and once this is clear, once you have your ideas clear on how to create the 4 present tenses, then it becomes really easy to understand how to create the 4 past tenses, because it's a structure that is completely parallel to the present. So if I choose to use the past and not to use the perfect, then I need to ask myself, do I want to use the simple form or the be plus VING form? And now you know what I'm going to do next. Now let's choose this one. And actually, yes, I forgot to tell you that this video is for you to learn things, and the best way to learn is to participate actively. So please answer the questions before I do, and stop the video if you need more time. So you know exactly what I'm going to say now. If you choose the past and if you choose to associate it to have plus VEN, then the third logical question is, do I use the simple form or do I use the be plus VING form? So it looks like it's repeating itself, but it's actually one single question. And it is just that you may ask yourself this question after having made different choices. So we can see all the different possibilities here in the matrix, which makes things really, really clear. And now we can go on to naming all the tenses that exist in English, because we have everything that is necessary to create all these tenses. That is to say, we have the operators that I am highlighting here in yellow. So number 1, VSVD, number 4, have EN, have plus VN, and number 5, be plus VING, or the simple form. So these 3 pairs of operators are the only ones that are required to create all the tenses that exist in English and that we are going to write on this line here. So what's the first one? What are we going to write in this box here that I'm highlighting in yellow? Well, it's really easy, because in the matrix you can see the formulas. You just have to go straight up everyone from each of these boxes, and you can see that in this box we're going to have the present simple, right? There's no mention of the perfect. So the present simple, this is indeed the first tense that we had mentioned in the previous video on verb formulas. And so let's add it to the matrix so we can see everything at once on the same one-page presentation, the simple present. What's the next one? So in the next box here, we again go straight up and we know we're going to have the present be plus VING. Again, no mention of this 0 here, which refers to the absence of perfect and which does not have a name. So the present be plus VING is indeed the second tense that we had mentioned in the recap table for all the tenses that exist in English. Let's add it to the matrix so we have everything in the same place. Here we go, the present be plus VING. What's the next one? Again, we just have to go straight up to see the formula. So this is the present perfect simple, right? The present perfect simple. Again, that's what we had in our recap table here on tenses. Let's add it to the matrix, the present perfect simple. And the last one you have already guessed. Otherwise, stop the video and take the time you need to find out yourself what the name of the last tense is. You just need to go straight up always the same technique, and you can see that this is the present perfect be plus V-I-N-G. So that's indeed the name of the fourth present in the recap table on tenses. Let's add it to the matrix here. The present perfect be plus V-I-N-G. So again, since we know that there's a parallel between the present and the past, we know that it's going to be exactly the same thing on the second half of the table. So let's go on to the next tense. Now we know that in this box here, we just need to go straight up to see the formula, and we know that this is the past simple, which is what we had here, the past simple, and that we add in the matrix. Before we go on to the next one, this time here, we go straight up again, and we know we have the past be plus V-I-N-G. Okay, that's what we see here in the recap table, and that we add to the matrix so that we have everything in the same place. And the next one is getting really too easy. I just go straight up and I see the name of the tense is the past perfect simple. Okay, that's in the recap table, past perfect simple, and we add it to the matrix, past perfect simple. And the last tense that exists in English, again, same technique. I know how to find the formula in the matrix. I just go straight up, and I know this is the past perfect be plus V-I-N-G. Whoops. Okay, past perfect be plus V-I-N-G, that is what we had in the recap table, where also we can see the 4 present tenses, the 4 past tenses, but then we're putting everything in the matrix so we can have everything at our disposal on this one-page presentation. Okay, so that's it. We have named all the tenses that exist in English, and it is really, really clear to us now how to create them. We know that these tenses, these conjugations, are actually combinations of operators, and we know which operators to combine to create them, to create the tenses and give a form to a verb. What are we going to do next? Yes, we're going to add examples on this line here. Examples in the matrix. And of course, to do that, we need to add operator number 6. So you remember operator number 6 is, do I put, the choice number 6, with the last option that we need to make up our mind on is, do I use the passive voice or do I use the active voice? Okay, and the active voice, as you can see, is the absence of passive voice. So let's add that in the matrix. Number 6, do I use the active voice or the passive voice? And as I just said, we are going to add in the matrix examples on this line here for all the tenses in the active voice, and that's going to be without a modal. Okay, so let's do that. So obviously, let's go there, and we can see the formula on the equation. So we know the formula Vs plus 0, you can see it here, Vs plus 0, that's this 0, the 0 of the simple form that is mentioned in this condensed formula. So this is the formula of the present simple, and we want to give an example. So let's say we use as a subject he, and then the infinitive is going to be the verb see, and the object is going to be her. So the sentence that we can give as an example in the present simple is he sees her. And so let's add this example in the verb matrix here. He sees her, okay? So now we're going to add the second example here in the present be plus ing. So again, stop the video if you need more time to write down the example yourself before we do it together. So again, let's have a quick look at the formula in the equation. That's vs plus b plus ving. You can see the formula written here. And we use the same lexical notions to create a sentence. In this case, the sentence will be, he is seeing her, and we do understand that there's only one verb in a verb phrase or verb group, and it's always at the end in the formula. It's always in the last V place in the formula, and the other V places are filled by the operator that follows in the formula. Therefore, so that's all in the video on formulas. And therefore, we know that we want the present of be, which is, and the VING form of see, which is seeing. Let's add the example in the matrix. He's seeing her. So that's an example of, yes, that's an example of a verb in the present be plus ving, okay? And you remember, you can find the formula for the present be plus ving just by going straight up in the matrix. And we also know that this is without be plus ven, so this is the active voice, and this is also without a modal. Okay, let's go on to the next one. What example are we going to write down for the present perfect simple? So again, we know how to find, let me maybe change colors quickly. So this one here, we know how to find the formula. We want VS, have plus VEN, and the simple form to give an example in the present perfect simple. So again, we take the same lexical notions and we put the verb in the sentence using the formula of the present perfect simple. So as you can see, the present perfect simple, the names of the tenses mirror the operators, mirror the formula, mirror the operators that appear in the formula. And you can see the formula here maybe more clearly in the equation. So that's VS plus have plus VN plus 0, the 0 of the simple form. It's important, we need to mention it. And therefore the verb form and the sentence that we have here is the present of have, which is has, and the past participle of the verb see, which is seen, and therefore he has seen her is the example that we're going to add in the matrix. He has seen her. Let's go on to the next one. So this time we want to add an example here. Have you found it yet? And we know we can find the formula by just going straight up. We need to use VS, have plus VN, and be plus VING, which is really easy because it corresponds exactly to, you know, the present VS and then the perfect have plus VEN and then be plus VING. So the formula is, I mean, I think you can find it here rather easily, but maybe it is nice to have the presentation in the equation at the back of your mind because maybe it's more obvious. So that's VS plus have plus VN plus B plus VING. So that's the formula of the present perfect be plus VING. And we know how to combine the operators in the formula in order to give a form to the verb. So we want the present of have, which is has, and the past participle of be, which is been, and the VING form of the verb see. Therefore, he has been seeing her is the example that we are going to write in this box here. He has been seeing her. So that's it. We have examples for the 4 present tenses of English, and we know that the other half of the table here is going to have the same thing, except all the examples are going to be in the past instead of being in the present. So yes, it's important to be aware of this parallel between the present tenses and the past tenses, because it makes things easier to grasp, to understand, and to apply. So let's go on to the next one here. So now you know, it's really clear. How do I create the past simple? Well, I find the formula easily in the matrix. So I know I have to associate operator VED with operator 0 to create the simple past, and I use again the same lexical notions. So I can see VED plus the simple form here, and the sentence is going to be he saw her. Let's write it down in the matrix and go on to the next one. Again, it's really getting too easy. I know that to find the verb form here in the past be plus VING, I just have to associate the operators that are in the formula of that tense. And again, I have in mind the equation where maybe I can see more clearly VED plus B plus VING. And I know how to create the sentence. I want the past of be, which is was, and the VING form of whatever verb I want to use. In this case, we're using the verb see, so that's he was seeing her. And let's go on to the example in the past perfect simple. So again, we know how to find the verb formula in the matrix, and we have at the back of our minds the representation in the equation, which is maybe clearer, VED plus half plus VN plus the simple form. That's really key, don't forget it. And then once you have the formula of, again, the past perfect simple, it's also called the pluperfect. Yes, the pluperfect simple. And so the example this time is he had seen her. Let's add it in the matrix. He had seen her. And we now go on to the last example that we're going to write down in the matrix to remind us of what forms a verb can take in English. So when we use the past perfect be plus VING, we know we need to combine all the operators that are mentioned in the matrix and in the equation as well. So that is for the past VED, for the perfect half plus VEN, and then be plus VING. So again, the same lexical notions that we're using with the formula VED plus half plus VEN plus B plus VING. Again, the formula of the past perfect be plus VING. And the sentence is he had been seeing her. He had been seeing her. So that's what we add to in the matrix here, the last example here on this line where we have examples in the active voice without a modal for all the tenses that exist in English, as a reminder for us of the different verb forms that we can create in English. Okay, what's the next step? Well, the next step, as you remember, we were not using be plus ven, and on the next line, we want to add it. We want to add the passive voice in the examples that we have given here. So we're going to take the same examples and add be plus ven to turn these active sentences into passive voice sentences. So if we look at the equation, right now we have given examples in the active voice, so that's without be plus ven with this 0 here. And what we now want is, instead of this 0, we want to add be plus ven. So how are we going to do that? Well, very simply, we're going to go back to our list of all the tenses and maybe add more space to that list. So this is exactly the same list of all the tenses with their formulas and examples. And on the extra lines, we're going to add the symbol for the passive voice. So instead of the 0 here, which represents the active voice, we're going to write the same formula, but with be plus ven. So let's do that with be plus ven on the second line here. And then we're going to come up with examples to add them in the verb matrix on the second line here, the line that has examples in the passive voice without a modal, for all the tenses that exist in English. So before we do that, maybe we should remember to associate, but that's just to get started, to associate the passive voice with the story of the cat and the mouse. 1 mouse, 2 mice, so let's go for the mice. And yes, and remember that when you switch from an active voice sentence to a passive voice sentence, so what you do is you add be plus ven to the formula, and you also want to you also want to use as the subject of the passive voice sentence what used to be the object of the active voice sentence. And you can, but it's not always necessary, mention the agent that you introduce with the preposition by. And the agent in the passive voice sentence is what used to be what appears in the form of the subject in the active voice sentence. So remember to switch. That's what we are going to have to do here. So let's focus on the present simple. So you remember here we have an example in the present simple, and the formula of the present simple is this one here in the active voice, and this time we want the passive voice. So what we do is we want the present of be, which is, and then we want the past participle of the verb, and we remember to use the object of the active voice sentence as our subject in the passive voice sentence. So she is seen by him is the example we're going to add here in the verb matrix, so we can see everything and remember everything and find it really easy to create all those verb forms. Let's go on to the second one here. So this time we want the present be plus VING with the passive voice. Okay, so we're going to switch from he's seeing her, the sentence in the active voice, to the sentence in the passive voice. So let's focus on that. We have he's seen her here, the sentence in the active voice and its formula, and instead of the 0 of the active voice, we're going to add the symbol, the formula of the passive voice be plus VEN. Therefore, we want the present of be, which is, and then the VING form of be, being, and the past participle of the verb. Let's add she's being seen by him in the matrix. She is being seen by him. Let's do the same thing for the perfect, the present perfect simple. We're going to switch from the active voice sentence to the passive voice sentence. So again, we have the formula here in the active voice sentence, and we want to add the passive voice. So we want the present of have, which is has, the past participle of be, which is been, and the past participle of whatever verb we want to use, in this case the verb see. So the sentence, he has been seen by her, no, she has been seen by him, is the sentence that we will use as an example in the matrix. Let's go on to the last example here that we're going to write for the present perfect be plus VING. So again, we start from the sentence or the verb form in the active voice. And we add the passive voice. So we want the present of have. It's getting really, really simple, right? And then the past participle of be, which is been, and the VING form of be, which is being, and the VEN, the past participle form of the verb. So she has been being seen by him is the example that we want to add in the last box here for the examples in the present with the passive voice. Okay, so great. I hope everything is getting clearer and clearer. And as you know, once you understand how it works for the present, it's really simple if you know there's a parallel between the present and the past. So it makes it really easy to understand how it's going to work in the past. So these examples here are going to be the same ones as these ones here, except they're going to be in the past. How easy! Okay, so let's get started. Let's go from he saw her in the past simple to the passive voice sentence. So the active voice formula, you can see it here, and you add be plus VEN. So you want the past of be, which is was, and the past participle of the verb. So in the matrix, we add she was seen by him. And then we have the active voice verb form was seeing in the past be plus VING, and we want to switch to a passive voice verb form. So we want the past of be, which is was, and the VING form of be, which is being, plus the past participle of the verb. So we add she was being seen by him in the matrix, and we go on to the example in the past perfect simple. So here we have already written the active voice verb form, and we want to switch from the active voice verb form and formula to the formula that adds the passive voice. And we want the past of have, which is had, the past participle of be, which is been, and the past participle of the verb, which is seen, and therefore we add in the formula she had been seen by him. And we go on to the last box on this line for the past perfect be plus VING. In the active voice, we have had been seeing. So we had been seeing her, and instead of the active voice, we want the passive voice, and we know how to combine all the operators of the past perfect be plus VING. So we want the past of have, which is had, and the past participle of be, which is being, the VING form of be, which is being, and the past participle of the verb, in this case, seen. So yes, we have it all. Let's add some color for the sake of clarity. We have here all the tenses that exist in English in the active voice on the lines that are white and in the passive voice on the lines that are yellow. So let's add the last example that we made here. She had been being seen by him. Let's add it in the matrix. She had been being seen by him, which is the most complicated, the most complex, I should say, verb form that can be used in English unless you add a modal, which is what we're going to do in a minute. So it is quite complex, and it is understandable that some students should come up with verb forms that are not correct, but now that you understand how it works, and it's so logical, so simple, so easy, now that you understand how it works, you can create verb forms that are exclusively correct. Now that we have done quite a few things, yes, let's notice that all the examples that we have given are examples of the same type of sentence. They're all positive declarative sentences. They're also called affirmative sentences, but it's more precise to talk about positive declarative sentences, okay? And if we want to create all the other types of sentences that exist in English, then how do we do that? If I want to go from he sees her to, so from a positive declarative sentence to a negative declarative sentence, for instance, what do I do? And so as you can see, it is necessary to add an operator to create all the other types of sentences. And in this case, when we are in the present simple, the operator that we need to use is operator do plus V0, right? Because then we can say, we can go from the positive declarative sentence which appears here, he sees her, to the negative sentence. We need to go back to the basic sentence using operator do plus V0, therefore he does not see her, and all the other types of sentences. This is a different subject. I'm just really mentioning it very briefly. So yes, do plus V0, maybe I'm going to highlight it here for you. So do plus V0 is the operator that needs to be used for to turn sentences that are in the present simple. If you want to turn a positive declarative sentence in the present simple, you want to switch to all the other types of sentences, then you need to use do plus V0. How about in the present be plus V-ing? How does that work? Well, in this case, if you are using the present be plus V-ing and you want to go from he's seen her, which is a positive declarative sentence, to another type of sentence, let's say a positive interrogative sentence, then what operator do you need to use? Well, as you know, the sentence, so this is he's seen her, the positive declarative sentence that we can see here. And then if I want to turn it into a positive interrogative sentence, the operator I use is operator be plus V-ing. Is he seeing her? And actually, I'm going to remember that I use operator be where anytime I see be in a sentence, be is the operator that I use to create all the other types of sentences, whether it's be on its own or be plus VING or be plus VEN. Be is the operator that I use. So it means that here, for instance, I could highlight this, but also this, that is to say, the passive voice also includes be, therefore all three cases here. So that's the present be plus VING, but also as soon as there is the passive voice, so in this case, in the present simple, if there is the passive voice, anytime there is be in a positive declarative sentence, be is the operator you use to create all the other types of sentences. Now, how does it work with the present perfect simple? Well, actually, yes, we could have highlighted here that this is in blue how it works with, be plus VING or be plus VEN. Be is always the tool, the operator that you use to create the different types of sentences. And then the next point is that it's not really when you have the present perfect simple, it's rather anytime you have the perfect, whether it is simple or be plus VING, anytime there is have plus VEN in a sentence, so that includes the four cases here. Let's say I start from the sentence, he has seen her, and I want to create an interrogative sentence. So what I do is I use operator, you have guessed, so I use operator have plus VEN, right? And I go from he has seen her to has he seen her or he has not seen her, and so on and so forth. All the different types of sentences are created using operator have plus VEN as soon as that operator appears in a sentence. It is the one we use to create all the different types of sentences. And again, this matrix shows very clearly that once you understand how it works for the present, it's really easy to understand that it works the same for the past. Therefore, we're just going to use the same operators in the past, right? So you will go from he saw her to he did see her, for instance, for an emphatic sentence. And he was seeing her would be was he seeing her, for an interrogative, a positive interrogative sentence. And he had seen her, that would be, let's make a negative sentence. He had not seen her, and he had been seeing her. Let's make a positive interrogative sentence. Had he been seeing her? Okay, so have plus VEN, same as with the present, is always used as soon as there is the perfect in the sentence. So that's what we can see here in the matrix. Actually, you can see, and it's even written, that you always use operator do plus V0 to create all the different types of sentences, unless there is a red operator in the sentence. Okay? We could also say it with this slide. So you always use operator do plus V0 to create all the different types of sentences, unless there is be or be plus VING or be plus VEN in the positive declarative sentence, and unless there is have plus VEN in the positive declarative sentence. And also this last point we haven't mentioned yet, unless there is a modal. So we really need to take into account all the red operators, and if there is a modal in the positive declarative sentence, we're going to use the modal to create all the different types of sentences. So let's add it here on the line where all the operators are mentioned, so we know now which operators we need to use to create all the different types of sentences. It's always it's always the green one, unless there is a red one in the basic sentence, the positive declarative sentence. So let's go on to the next step in the verb matrix. Right now, so far, we have given examples for all the tenses that exist in English without a modal in the active voice that I'm highlighting here, and also in the passive voice right underneath it. And now we're going to fill in the last two lines with examples with a modal. Okay, so it's going to be the same examples as the ones we have already given, except that we're going to add a modal in them. And then on the first line, we'll have a modal in the active voice, so same thing as the first line here. And on the second line, we'll have examples with the passive voice and a modal. So same thing as the second line here, except we'll add a modal. So what are modals? Well, modals are tools, operators that are used by speakers to express their personal point of view. And you can see on the screen an exhaustive list of modals. So as you can see, yes, maybe better in the equation. In the equation, we can see very well that modals are red operators, and we know that they need to be combined with one of the blue ones in order to give a form to a verb. So that's what we can see here. Modals on the first line are combined with VS, so that's may, can, shall, will, must, need, and dare. And on the second line, modals are combined with VED, so that's might, could, should, would, must, need, and dare. So many things to say on modals. I just won't go into that now. Let's focus on the thread we are following. So what we want to do now is add examples here on this line in the active voice with a modal. Let's say we choose the modal may. So we're going to go again from examples without a modal, examples in the active voice without a modal, to examples in the active voice with the modal may. So what we do is we go back to our recap table with all the tenses, and then this time on the lines in yellow, we're going to add modals. So let's add modals in the formulas. You can see them everywhere, and you know that we need to combine them with either VS or VED every time. And yes, let's do that. So let's focus on the first case here. The active voice sentence without a modal is he sees her, and then I want to add a modal to give an example in the present tense. So what I do is I combine VS and the modal may, so that's may, and then I want to add the verb base of the verb that I have chosen, which in this case is see. Therefore, he may see her is the example that I'm going to add here in the verb matrix. He may see her. And yes, so this again, like all the other examples, is an example of a positive declarative sentence. And if I click on this box here, he may see her, then I can see that he may see her is the positive declarative sentence. And I can see that I need to use the modal to create all the other types of sentences, okay? But that's another question. So the subject of another video for now, let's focus on the next step here. Let's go from the example here in the active voice without a modal and in the present be plus VING. So this time we want to add a modal. So yes, let's do that. So we add the modal in the formula, and then we know how the formula works, and we know how to combine the operators. Things are really getting very, very clear and very, very simple. He may be seeing her. You understand exactly how we come up with that verb form, and we can now add it to the verb matrix. He may be seeing her. Let's go on to the next tense, the present perfect simple. Let me highlight it, the present perfect simple that we're going to write here in this box. And again, this time we want it to be in the active voice with the modal may. So it's going to be basically the same thing as here where we had the active voice but without a modal. So we're just going to add may in this box here. So that's what we do with the formulas. We had he has seen her, and that's the formula without a modal. We add a modal, and then we know how it works, how to combine the different operators. So we come up very easily with the verb phrase may have seen, and we can add it to the matrix. He may have seen her. Let's go on to the present perfect be plus VING with a modal in the active voice here in this box. So we start from the formula of the present perfect be plus VING in the active voice. And so we still want the active voice, and this time we want to add a modal. We know how to combine the operators, so we want the present of the modal, which is may, and then the verb base of have, which is have, and then the past participle of be, which is been, and the VING, the present participle of the verb, which is seeing, that we can now add. He may have been seeing her in the matrix. He may have been seeing her is the last example here for the present tenses. Let's go on to the second half of the matrix here. So again, pause the video if you need more time to find the verb forms before I mention them. So the next one, again, for the past simple, we start with the example without the modal, and we add it. So we add the modal may in the past, so that's might. And then we just add the verb base, which is see. So he might see her is the form that the verb group or verb phrase takes in the past simple with a modal in the active voice. So we need to make a very, very important remark at this point, because we're working on verb forms, and this is a formal presentation. And this presentation will only be complete when we work on the meaning of those verb forms. So the meaning of each of these operators. What does it mean when I use the present? What is the meaning that is conveyed? And same for all the other operators here. And we will see that each of these operators has one single meaning, one single function. Anytime I use the perfect or the present or the past or be plus VING or the simple form, it's always for the same reason. It's always to express the same meaning. It enables the speaker to express a meaning that does not vary, a meaning that is invariant, and that is called an invariant. And so we will mention the invariants of all the operators on this line here when we have dealt with the presentation of the forms, because that's a second step. We're first focusing on the forms of the verbs, and then we'll deal with the meaning that they express. But it still is important to make sure that you are not imagining that when we go from may to might, so from the modal in the present to the modal in the past, it means that we go from a reference to a point in the chronological present time, so a point in time that's in the present, to a point in time that's in the past. This is not at all what this is about. And this is a really, really big question, the relation between tenses and time, chronological time. So we will deal with that in another video. And right now, I would just like to point out the fact that when you use might, it does not mean that you refer to a point in the past, right? To the chronological past time. So let's print that in your memories with this big red mention here. When you associate operator VED to operator modal plus V0, it does not mean that there is a chronological gap between now and what you are referring to. And therefore, it does not mean when you use the operator of the past that you are referring to a point in time that is in the past. What it actually means in this case is that it refers to a reality gap. Therefore, the meaning of the modal is made more unreal and the modal is not as strong. And if you want to use a modal and to refer to a point in time that is in the past, you need to associate the modal to the perfect have plus VEN, because then it creates an interconnection between the modal and the thing you are referring to with have plus VEN. There's a connection between the two that creates that idea of a chronological gap, therefore a reference to the past. Let me give you a quick example to make things really, really clear. When you go from rates may rise to rates might rise, you're not actually switching from a reference to a point in time that's in the present, like in the French, il se peut que les taux augmentent, to a point in time that is referring to something in the past, like with the French, il se pouvait qu'ils augmentent ou qu'ils aient augmenté, ou bien les taux pouvaient augmenter. What is actually happening when you switch from may to might is that you are decreasing, lowering, weakening the value of the modal, and you're switching from il se peut to il se pourrait que. Okay, so that's really, really key. You need to remember that, hence the big red arrow here to help you memorize this key point. And let's go on with our work on the forms that the verbs take, and we will deal with the meaning of those verb forms later on in another video. So let's go on with the past be plus VING. So in the past be plus VING without a modal, we had he was seeing her, and then we want to add a modal. Modal plus V0 is the formula for that. And we know how to combine the operators. So we want the past of the modal may, which is might, and the verb base of be, the infinitive, that's be, and the present participle of the verb, which is seeing. Therefore, he might be seeing her is the example that we want to add in the verb matrix here. He might be seeing her. Let's go on to the past perfect simple. Here, the next box. So again, let's focus on the sentence in the past perfect simple without a modal, and we add modal plus V0 when we combine the operators. So we want the past of the modal may, which is might, the infinitive of have, which is have, and the past participle of the verb, which is seen, and therefore we can add the sentence, the example, he might have seen her. Come on. He might have seen her. Let's add the example in the matrix here. He might have seen her. And the last one in the past perfect, be plus VING. So again, we switch from the formula without the modal to the formula with the modal, and we combine the operators the way we know we have to do it, which is really, really simple, with the verb in the last V place and all the other V places filled by the operator that follows in the formula. So that's the past of the modal, therefore might, the infinitive of have, the past participle of be, been, and the present participle of the verb, which is seeing. He might have been seeing her, therefore is the last example. And our presentation here, I'm in this recap table of all the tenses that exist in English in with examples without a modal on the white lines and with a modal on the yellow lines is complete. This is complete. And we can add the last example we came up with. He might have been seeing her in the matrix. So he might have been seeing her. That's the last example that we will give here for verbs in the active voice and with a modal. So now let's go on to the last part of the matrix. On the last line, we're going to have it all. That is to say, we're going to have a modal plus the passive voice for all the tenses that exist in English. So in the equation, let me show you quickly. We're going to have everything but do plus V0, and obviously, as you remember, the red operators are not compatible with the green one. So we'll have the two blue ones, on each half of the table. And we remember how parallel the way they function is. And then all the red operators, we're going to combine all of them. So let's do that. Let's start again from this table in which we have all the tenses of English and their formulas and examples. And now we want to add both a modal, so modal plus V0, as you can see, appears everywhere here in the formulas on the yellow lines, as well as be plus VEN. So we're going to give examples with the modal may in the passive voice. Okay, so let's focus on the first one. The first one here is yes, so I start from he sees her. I have the formula here in the present simple, and I want to add modal plus V0 and be plus VEN. And then I know how to combine the operators. I first want the present of the modal, which is may, and then I want the verb base of be, which is be, and then I want the past participle of the verb. May be seen is the example that I add in the verb matrix here. She may be seen by him. You remember that the subject of the passive voice is what corresponds to the object in the active voice. We mentioned it earlier. Let's go on to the example in the present be plus VING here, again with the passive voice and a modal. So we have everything here in the formula, starting from this sentence in the present be plus VING and its formula. We add the symbol for the modal, and which is modal plus V0, and be plus VEN for the passive voice, and then we combine the operators and we want the present of the modal plus the verb base of be plus the VING form of be, which is being, and the past participle of the verb, and then we can add she may be being seen by him in the matrix in the second box here for the present be plus VING with the passive voice and a modal. Okay, let's go on to the next one, the present perfect simple, again with a modal and the passive voice. So everything is clear, right? We're juggling with quite a few operators, but you do understand how it works. So it's the present of the modal plus the verb base of have plus the past participle of be and the past participle of the verb she may have been seen by him is the example that we're now writing in the verb matrix. And let's go on to the most complex form ever that a verb can take in English. So the present perfect be plus VING plus a modal plus the passive voice. So it is getting really complex, and yet it is very, very clear because we understand how it works and we know how to combine the operators. So let's do it. So that's the present of the modal, so may, and then the infinitive of have, and the past participle of be, which is been, the VING form of be, being, and the past participle of the verb, so she may have been being seen, is the verb form that is the most complex one you can ever find in English because it combines all four red operators with a blue one, and that's the maximum number of operators that you can combine in a verb form in English. So let's add it to the matrix so we have everything in the same place for the sake of clarity, for clarity's sake. So she may have been being seen by him. And of course, there would be many things to say about the meaning of those forms and the translation of those forms into French or Spanish or other languages, and we will have a look at those questions in another video. For now, let's go on to the second half of the table. So same thing as what we've just done, except we're going to associate the operators with the past instead of the present. So let's do that. Let's switch from he saw her, which is the past simple, to, well, it still is the past simple, but this time we add to the tense a modal and the passive voice. So the modal in the past will be might, and then we want the verb base of be, which is be, and the past participle of see, which is seen. She might be seen by him. Let's add it to the matrix. She might be seen by him. And also let us remember that when we use might, it does not mean we are referring to a point in chronological time, that is in the past. Yes, the next one, the past be plus VING. So again, the sentence here in the past be plus VING with the formula, we add the modal and the passive voice, and we combine the operators. Now you get it, you know how it works. It's always the same technique. It's always the same thing. It's really simple. Even though it is quite complex, you understand how to combine the operators and you know how to get your verb forms right, because it's easy when you understand the logic. So she might be being seen by him is the next example that we add in the matrix here for the past be plus VING with a modal and with the passive voice. She might be being seen by him. Let's go on to an example with the past perfect simple. And again, I'm repeating myself so that it's really clear to all of you. So in this box here, we have the past perfect simple plus a modal and the passive voice. So again, let's start from the past perfect simple. The formula is written here on the white line and we have the example there. We want to add to that formula modal plus V0 and the passive voice, and we combine the operators the way you know how to combine them now to get the verb form might have been seen, which we add to the matrix. She might have been seen by him. And we reach the last box in the matrix. So the past perfect be plus VING, which, as you know, is just as complex as the present perfect be plus VING here. So we're going to have the same number of operators, which is the maximum number of operators we can have. That is to say, the 4 red operators combined with the blue one, because we always have to have a blue one anyway. And therefore, the past perfect be plus VING with a modal and with the passive voice is going to read as follows. She might have been being seen by him. So again, the most complex verb form you can find in English, and this time this presentation here with all the tenses of English on the white lines and those same tenses associated with a modal and the passive voice on the yellow lines. So this table here is now complete. We've just added the last example here. She might have been being seen by him that we want to add to the matrix. So in the last box here, she might have been being seen by him. And that's it. We have it all. So remember that when you switch from may to might, you're not switching from a reference to a chronological point in the present to a point in the past. So that's really, really important to remember. And yes, so for now, let's say the matrix is complete, because obviously, as I said before, we have finished working on all the different forms a verb can take. And when you have that document, when you have memorized it, and everything really is very, very clear for you. And of course, to memorize it, you need to keep it with you, have it with you when you're working, so you can check everything. Everything really is on this presentation. The verb matrix has all the elements that you need to keep in mind to give a form to a verb. So it makes things really, really clear. And then obviously the second step is to know how to choose these operators. And to choose them, you need to know what they mean, what they are used for, what their invariants are. So that will be the subject of another video. And if you have any questions on this video, please do send them to me. Email me at semeiolinguistics@gmail.com. I'm very much interested in your questions and in some feedback as well. And so, as I said, this presentation of the first part, the formal part of the matrix, is complete. And if you're interested in having a laminated copy of the matrix, you can find it on Amazon, and I will put a link for you below the video. And also you can find books on Amazon on the same topics as the videos. So the first one on the equation, the second one on the formulas to use the equation, and the third one that wraps it all up and shows you how to go from the equation to all the different verb forms that exist in English, and you have it all under your eyes when you have the matrix in your memory. Okay, so I guess that's it. We are complete for now. I would just like to thank you very much for your attention. I hope it's been useful. I hope you have your ideas clear on verb forms now, and I hope you enjoyed seeing how clear your ideas could get. And then that you're going to apply this method, this tool, this matrix in the work you do in English. And yes, so I would like to thank you for working with me. If you enjoyed this video, you can click the like button below and send me your comments. And I'll see you in the next video. In the meantime, I wish you all the best.